What is up, Wizards fans? Welcome into another Believe in Wizards podcast. I'm Matt Modderno, joined here today by the host of the Wizards Weekly podcast, Jim Coulter. Jim, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt.
Jim, you are an actual hooper, unlike most of the rest of us. So give us a little bit on the background here and tell folks, if they're not familiar, a little bit about the podcast.
Yeah, so played in high school and then had a chance to play in college for 3 years at a Division III school. So, I wasn't
Hey,
amazing or anything, but
don't
I
make
was
light
I
of
was
that. That's
decent.
still better than the rest of us.
Yeah, no, it was good. I learned a lot about basketball too while I was playing there. So, yeah, I have a podcast. I started it over the summer. It's called Wizards Weekly. I think you can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, like wherever you listen. And I've liked this podcast for a long time. So, odds are if you're listening to this, you'll probably enjoy some of my content as well, I hope. So, yeah, go check it out.
Definitely would second that. It's in my rotation. I learn a lot just because you have that perspective of somebody that's understanding what they're seeing on the floor, which is always great. Before we get too far into it, we're brought to you by Stateside Vodka and their Surfside Hard Iced Teas and Hard Lemonades, Hard Everything. Strawberry lemonade, particularly good. That's my new favorite flavor, so give that a try. And brought to you by BetOnline. It's your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. Obviously, the NBA is about to be in full swing here, so go place a bet on the Wizards to win opening day, maybe against the Boston Celtics if you're crazy and like lighting money on fire. I don't know, just throwing that out there. Get all the latest stats, news, scores available for your favorite teams, the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports, player props, all those things you can think of for all your favorite games. Head to the website today and use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet online where the game starts. Okay, so the game we're previewing here is the Wizards' final preseason game. It's Knicks at Wizards at 7 p.m. on Friday. The first game did not go particularly well. I actually think New York could have beat them by 50 if they'd really wanted to do that, which is a bummer. The Wizards have been probably the most disappointing team in the preseason in the entire league, losing by an average of 30-ish points per game. So that's been tough, but there's been some bright spots. So Jim, maybe let's just start there. What's been like your one shining thing you're hanging your hat on here from the preseason here? Like, what's been your favorite part?
Sarr's 3-point shooting is
Yeah.
the number one thing to me. I think that's the easiest way for him to be a good offensive player is if he just becomes, even if he's a 36, 37%
Sure.
3-point shooter, someone you have to respect from out there, because I think a lot of the stuff that he needs to improve on in terms of like being a real center, screening and rebounding and the hands, like I think those are issues. And if he's able to space the floor and play more as like a big wing or a forward, like to me, that's the easiest way, especially early on, that he can stay on the floor offensively, because I think the defense is great. He just needs to be competent offensively, especially early on. And yeah, to me, that's been like the number one bright spot. I think Keyshawn George has been a huge bright spot as well. I know you're a big fan of his. So.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I guess question there for you. I've never seen anybody where I thought like multiple years in their career, like, hey, their hands look way better. Have you ever, can you think of anyone where that's a thing that they've improved at in your experience?
I cannot. I think they look slightly better than when he was in summer league. I've seen him make like a few
The
catches on
passes
the
are probably
move.
better now too, a little more on the money.
Yeah. Yeah. There were times at summer league where guys were like firing passes to him from 3 feet away. And it's like, that's going to be hard for anyone to catch. But yeah, I don't think that's ever going to be like a huge strength for him as someone who's going to just be like a catch and finish guy around the rim. Like his finishing needs some work as well. He basically doesn't shoot left-handed layups ever. He had one where he cut to the rim and then did like a turnaround right hand hook when he could have just, I think it was against the Knicks the first time we played him, and he could have easily gone up with the left, but just didn't at all. So yeah, I think that stuff is a long ways away if it ever comes. So the 3-point shooting looking this promising early on is just absolutely huge to me. So
Yeah, just him being confident enough to keep taking them, even if the percentage comes down, 15 percentage points, I'll still feel good about like that. It looks relatively fluid, which we've seen like those practice footage clips where there was like herky jerkiness. It doesn't seem that way, sped up at game time. So that's awesome. On the like not finishing left-handed thing, I just remember one year in the Jalen Duren draft that there was a stat that he had not finished a single basket with his left hand the entire season, which is like almost impossible to do when you're that big around the rim. But at least for him, he's just going to dunk everything anyway. So at least if Sarr is going to go up strong, that would be fine with me. I could live with it, but he's got to bulk up here a little bit. And I think that's true of like basically every one of the Wizards rookies is just please, please, please live in the weight room as much as possible. So we'll see how it goes.
yes.
They really missed him though in this last preseason game. They missed Koulibaly. it's weird to say that like the rookies being out, it seemed to just sort of like kill the energy or the effort level. Like they just looked flat for almost that entire Nets game, in my opinion. So I
Mhm.
guess that's a good sign if you're going to keep playing those guys a lot of minutes that they're meaningful. But the whole rest of the team shouldn't like totally cave in around them if they the two young players like that have to miss games.
Yeah, I think the energy and just the like ability they bring defensively is so huge for
Yeah.
this team. I think offensively for both of them, it's going to be a bit of a struggle, but this team is not full of great defensive players. But Sar and Bilal, like their at least their potential on that end is super high, and they can make like really high end plays. And I think we really felt the absence of them on the defensive end more than anything. So
You could honestly probably make the case that the two best defenders on the team already.
I would make that case.
Okay, good. I thought I was crazy while I was thinking through it, but in my mind, like Denny was still here for a minute. I'm like, well, there's other. Well, no, there really aren't. Like
No.
Brogdon's like sneaky better defensively than you would think for like an old decrepit guy when he actually plays, but he's not like a game changer for everybody else on the floors. Like Sar and Koulibaly can kind of raise the level for everyone else too.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think like Kuzma has shown in the past like he can defend. I thought he was pretty good when he was on the Lakers during like their title run
Yep.
of doing that, but I don't know, the last like year and a half, 2 years
Mhm.
here, he hasn't really done that. So I actually would agree with that. I think it is Bilal and Sar to me. So
I'll die on the island that like Kuzma was a really good defender here 2 seasons ago, and you just heard it from every other impact player in the league that he guarded, and it was just like, okay, these guys can't all be stupid. Like Dame Lillard, if he's saying like this is one of the guys who's guarded me the best all year, like he can't be wrong. I think like so it's more to me than like whatever the numbers show, but I don't think anyone would make that case after last year, and just that's not Poole's forte. And as good as Valanciunas is at like ending possessions, he can't really guard anyone, in my opinion, anymore. So it really has to be the rookies, and that's a weird spot to be in. I'd like to see like Corey Kispert make some improvement this year on that end. I think there's like a little room there to be better, at least serviceable. So that's one I'm definitely looking forward to.
yeah, I mean Valanciunas, like you said, he helps with ending the possession, but
Mhm.
I thought he's looked really slow in
Yeah.
preseason and especially in that game against the first game against the Knicks. Like Cat didn't always punish him, but he had no shot of
Yeah.
getting out there to guard
Mhm.
Cat at the 3-point line. Like, yeah, and then he's never been like a great vertical rim protector down there. He's physical, but he's not really a deterrent to guys at the rim. So, yeah, he will help us with the rebounding, which we were terrible at last year, but
Mhm.
I don't think he's going to be getting a whole lot of stops for us. So,
You're really getting him for like 3 matchups the whole year, and it's basically like Embiid, maybe Jokic just to throw a big body at him, and like Nurkic, and then that's seemingly like it. Maybe a Zach Edey just because Sar would get his lunch eaten by someone that big, but
mhm.
otherwise, a matchup specifically like this next game, I probably wouldn't even play him. I'd honestly like rather see Bagley out there because at least he's going to chase Towns around a little bit better, even if he can't kind of slow him down. So
Yeah,
we'll
for
see what
sure.
that looks like. We've kind of gotten into it a little bit here, but just are there any other names to watch from your perspective? Like, are there guys that you're hoping get more minutes in this final preseason game that you're just looking to see a little bit more of?
Yeah, if we end up sitting some guys, and I don't know who all is gonna play, but
Yeah.
if the opportunity is there, I like John Butler. I've always kind of
Same.
liked him, even going
Mhm.
back to Florida State. Guys with that size and
Mhm.
length who can shoot are not super common. So I thought he looked pretty good in the summer league. Like he has his like ground coverage defensively is just really impressive. Like, well, one play just stuck out to me that I remember where he like tagged a roller going to the rim weak side. And
Mhm.
then they made the right pass, like they made the skip, and he was still able to get out there and get a deflection on it just because he's like 6'10" with a massive wingspan. And he can space the floor a little bit. So
And they
I kind
list
of
him
like
at
him.
7'2", and he looks bigger than Sar like already. I mean, a lot of it's hair maybe too because he got big hair, but I'm totally with you. Like to me, we'll go into this one here next in a minute. It's I don't need to see more of Patrick Baldwin Jr. at this point. Like, I think I know what we have there. Like, I feel bad kind of like just ragging on the guy every time. To me, there's someone like Butler Jr. He actually hits shots at a higher percentage from the perimeter and he guards. I mean, he guards a lot of people. And I don't know that he's like elite any one place on the floor, but the fact that you can guard a center and stay in front of a guard on the same possession is like so valuable. And that's really who I'd rather have like at the end of the bench for the Wizards, just kind of like seeing if they can improve or get even any kind of marginal playing time throughout the year. He's a utility guy you could plug a lot of holes with. And to me, if that's the last guy on the bench, like that's a more valuable use of even a two-way contract than some of these other guys that they've been looking into.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of Patrick Baldwin is good.
Yep.
The problem is I don't think the actual player is that great. And
Exactly.
I hate to say that because he's still young and he can
Mhm.
improve. And he is like 6'10", and
Sure.
the shot looks good. It
Mhm.
doesn't go in very often, but like there is some potential there. But I just at some point you have to see some improvement. And
Yeah.
I personally haven't really seen much from him over the last 2 years in terms of improving. I just yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I won't put you on the spot to say who gets cut because it's always kind of like a not a fun conversation to have. But that's one of the key storylines I have for this game is just this is the last opportunity for two guys on this roster to show that they deserve that last spot. And I really do think it's down to Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Johnny Davis. And Davis has the bigger salary, so there's more financial investment for him. You lose more dead money if you cut him. Not that they're in a position where like the money really matters a ton to them this year, but I kind of think if it's like a 50-50 decision, you probably get rid of the guy that costs you the least financially to do that. And that's kind of why I'm leaning toward it being Baldwin. But someone said to me the other day, like, well, at least Baldwin's good on offense. Johnny Davis never does anything on offense. It's like Baldwin is a sub 40% shooter for his career, and he's 6'9" or whatever the case may be. Davis is probably about the same from the floor, but he actually defends people. So it's who's going to make life tougher for other people in practice. I do wonder with Baldwin Jr., like sometimes you hear this, especially about young guys, like, oh, in practice, he's knocking down like every shot. Like maybe they see enough there that it's worth just like holding on to this like idea of what he could be. And that's enough for him to like kind of survive this. But both these guys, like I hope they get 20 minutes in this game and they play like their lives depend on it.
Yeah, I think if we're not considering like the financial impact of the
Sure.
decision, I would probably keep Johnny Davis, and I am not the biggest Johnny Davis fan, even going all the way back to when we drafted him, but
Mhm.
like he defends, he does, and he gives effort, and I think he's probably a good locker room guy. Not saying Baldwin Jr.
Yeah.
isn't, but like I think he can provide value, and if you can ever figure out the shot, I kind of think he's at least a bench player in the
Mhm.
NBA because he does defend, but um, I don't know if the shot's ever going to get there. I saw something that he said we'd been messing with his shot ever since he got here, and how
Mhm.
he's like just going back to his old form. But I swear, every time I watch him, it looks different. The
Yep.
the form looks
Yeah.
different
I think he
every
said that
single time.
basically
And
too.
yeah, so I don't know if the shot's ever going to get figured out with Johnny. But if it's between those two guys, I think I'd probably rather keep Johnny.
A shameless plug for anybody that missed this one. Probably 2 years ago at this point, I did a podcast with another former Wizard and Wisconsin Badger, Sam Decker, and I think it may be the best episode of the show we've ever done, just from like a really breaking things down and getting some insight perspective kind of stuff. And Sam talked about a big struggle for him was like he was a guy that hit shots at a pretty high level at Wisconsin without the cleanest form. And from day one, people just started like tinkering with his shot and it killed his confidence. And I think you saw the same thing happen with Davis. Like there may be some injury stuff there with it as well, like false thing. It probably was like all of the above perfect storm of things went wrong there. But I think this is like a thing, a cautionary tale for teams, right? Like it's hard with a young rookie coming in that's already got like a confidence issue to then say, hey, by the way, you can't shoot at all, and we have to totally start from scratch with you. Like mild little things like, hey, keep this elbow here. Like, okay, like that's probably all right. But I'd almost like let the guys play a season first and see if they can just do what they did enough to get comfortable. And then after year one, you really evaluate if things need to change or if it's more of an aesthetic issue. Because some of the best shooters of all time, like that, their forms don't all look the same. So you can be effective. Now, certain guys are clearly broken. Like if you bring in Michael Kid Gilchrist or Joakim Noah or one of those kind of guys, and you want to like tinker from day one, like fine. But Davis wasn't an elite shooter at Wisconsin, but he hit enough that it just shouldn't have needed like a total overhaul from day one. And he just looks shell shocked from that still like multiple years later. So I thought that was interesting from Sam, and I think the Wizards hopefully are learning a lesson from this because most of their young guys they brought in, with the exception of Keyshawn George, probably all need work on their shot. But we haven't heard about sweeping changes for Alex Sarr or Koulibaly or even Bub Carrington yet. So hopefully maybe that's a good lesson learned so far.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Johnny's shot at Wisconsin was not terrible, and
No,
the form wasn't perfect, but it
sure.
looked
He made
fine to
enough.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're gonna, I agree. Like if you're gonna give him a year, I would always try and see if the form they have been shooting
Mhm.
with for 20 plus years of their life works before I tinker
Yeah.
with
Or
it
you
all.
can rep it out enough to be
Yeah.
solid.
And if you're gonna tinker with anything, like tinker with the base if they need help
Mhm.
there. Like I always feel like that's easier to kind of
Totally agree.
fix or tweak a little bit, especially like right before a season starts, rather than messing up their entire upper body form, which is what it looked like they did with Davis. And I always thought Davis would at least be a good 3-and-D guard or
Same.
something like or good hustle role
Mhm.
player who can make enough shots. I never thought he would be like this. It's been a struggle, and it's really like kind of sad to see because I think a lot of it is confidence related to how they messed up his shot. So
I didn't like the pick from a just I thought the floor was like fine, but the ceiling was pretty low of just like a not that athletic 6'3" guy who's not a great shooter. But yeah, I'm with you. Like I would have never projected this. And there are some guys where you can say, like, I didn't think he'd ever like hang. If you'd have told me like Davis would be almost out of the league at the end of his first contract, I would have been very surprised by something like that. And I'm with you on the base. Like it's probably like an easier subtle change to make and might actually be more impactful. Like if guys have their like weight under them and are on balance when they shoot, that can give you a couple extra percentage points. And especially for someone like Davis, like for him, it was probably more about shot selection and just taking like crazy off balance shit at Wisconsin anyway, just given the role he played offensively, than it was like a total overhaul of the shot was needed.
And I wonder if it's like moving back to the 3-point line.
Mhm.
Maybe the old form didn't work, but they've
That's a
moved
good
the
point too.
college line back to the international line.
Right.
So
Not that
it's
big a
pretty
difference
close.
anymore.
I
Yeah.
don't think that was it for
Mhm.
Johnny. So yeah, I really can't explain like what the issue is there because he should never have been this bad of a shooter. Guys get better at shooting all the time after they enter the NBA. Like I thought he would improve enough. It's yeah, like I said, it's kind of sad to see. So,
Like this sounds bad, and I don't tell my normal podcast partner I said this, but like sometimes players are like a little delusional about some of the things that they say about themselves. I think that's part of the reason they get to where they are. But I've heard it from enough former players at this point where they're like, look, man, the biggest thing I needed was just like reps, just
mm,
millions and millions of reps at this point. And keeping the form was, actually more impactful. Like I remember Larry Hughes one time posting a video of him just hitting like 100 threes in a row, basically as like a 40-year-old man. And he wasn't an elite shooter in the NBA, but like at a certain point, like if you take enough of them and that's a thing that they prioritize, you're going to get better at it regardless. And that might actually be a better way to get you from, 34% to 38% than making these like wholesale sweeping changes. So we'll see. It seems like a lost cause from that point, or at this point, but we'll see how that matters for the other guys. Just circling back to like guys I'd like to see more of, still like driving the train for Jared Butler. We were talking about, John Butler, but I thought Jared was like the best organizer on the court the other night in that Nets game, which was kind of lost, but just kind of played like composed basketball despite the score and just got the ball to the right spots, like nothing flashy. But I think you want that from a backup guard. Like even playing him a few minutes next to Bub, I think would be good for both of them. Just like Bub can just focus on scoring and not having to do like everything from day one. And the other one's just Vucevic, man. Like I don't understand why he's completely in the doghouse here. It's the preseason. Give him 25 minutes tonight. Like I don't need to see Rashawn Holmes play preseason minutes. It's just not a thing that moves the needle for us.
mm. Yeah, I agree with Jared Butler for sure. Like that's my guy. I love Jared
Love
Butler.
it.
He's a little bit smaller, and he does struggle to like finish at the rim.
Mhm.
And guys are always going to attack him defensively, but I think he does a good job,
Mhm.
as good as he can do defensively. And I think
Right.
he's probably the best passer on the
I
team. He
think so
does a
too.
really nice job of just getting guys set up and getting them in their spots. And
Mhm.
Yeah, I like Jared Butler a lot, so I would like to see more of him. I think he can absolutely play in the league. Vucevic is weird because he just hasn't he looked good last year. I
Yeah.
don't really know what happened because he looked awful even going back to, like, the 5
He was
minutes he played in summer
just
league.
bad in summer league, yeah.
It was, like, the worst segment anyone
Mhm.
played in all of summer league, and I don't think he's looked a whole lot better this
Mhm.
preseason either. So I don't know what happened to him because he looked like a real find
Yeah.
towards the end of last year. So,
Yeah, that to me, that's another one where, like, maybe there was an off-season injury or something. He looks a little slower even and less I don't know, he looks less mobile, which is not great for somebody, and sometimes with young guys too, like, someone tells you, like, "Hey, you're a center, you've gotta bulk up," and sometimes guys like that put on too much weight. Like, we heard Porzingis talk about how when he got to Dallas, they told him to put on 25 pounds, and he just, like, "It destroyed my frame, like, I couldn't move," and that was why he had that resurgence in Washington was, like, lost all the weight and focused on flexibility and mobility and things like that, and if you're Vucevic, that's your biggest value added is, like, being a stretch big who can kinda run the floor at a reasonable clip. Like, we're never gonna want him to bang in the paint anyway, so I'm not saying that's the case, but it would be interesting to hear a little bit more from them about what that is. Uh, all right, Jim, just as we wrap this up, any other things you're looking for, in this game that'll signal other stuff for you over the course of the season or anything else you wanna touch on before we close out?
I think for Bub, like, what I'm gonna be looking for mainly is just him continuing to play with better pace. I think
Mhm,
he came out the first couple games and was just really sped up and playing really fast and kind of out of control, and he
mhm.
had some turnovers and stuff like that, but I think it started to slow down for him,
That's okay.
especially in that Raptors like, the second half of that Raptors game, because something he did in college all the time was he did a great job of coming off the screen and then keeping the guy in jail, like a little hostage
Mm,
dribble, as you call it, and I saw
sure.
him do that a couple times against the Raptors, and it was like, okay, maybe things are really starting to slow down for him. So that's one thing like I'll be watching for sure because I think he's actually looked good. The shots just aren't
Yeah,
falling,
agreed.
but yeah, I think just seeing the game like continue to slow down for Bub is what I'll be watching.
Yeah, that's a great one, and there was one in that Nets game too where he had the guy on his hip and then had, like, a little dump off pass as he drove, and you're like, "Yes, do this more." Like and
Yep.
just him in the pick and roll in that Raptors game with, Valanciunas, I thought was really good too. Like, that's a big body dude rolling to the rim after he sets the screen for you, and if he can't get you space, nobody's gonna. So,
Yeah.
same thing, I've said this about Poole too, like, just finding ways to get your on-ball guys a few easier looks, and that goes for Bub as well. Like, he's not, like, the most explosive athlete, so just finding a few ways to make his life a little easier, whether that's a good screen or whatever the case may be. I think that would be a nice takeaway here too. So great call. All right, folks. This is your preview for Wizards hosting the Knicks on Friday night. Just keep in mind that the opener is on 10/24. It's the Boston Celtics at home at 7 p.m. Tickets are crazy expensive already. I freed up at the last minute to go to that, and I'm just like hoping I can buy tickets at the last minute because they're pretty steep already, but hopefully you'll see some folks out there. If anybody's going after the game, hit me up. I'll try to see you there. Otherwise, Jim, thanks for doing this, man. I hope to have you on plenty of these, and everybody go please check out Wizards Weekly.
Yeah, appreciate you for having me. I'll be back, I'm sure. So
Awesome. Good stuff. All right, everybody know the drill. Hit like for us if you're watching on YouTube, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We are presented by betonline.ag, and we will catch you all next time.